Don't let nobody or nothing affect your walk with God. Don't go down to that level. As Christians, we have an obligation to be better, right? To know better. And in some cases, it's more hurtful when the church hurts you, because with the world, it's expected. Like all the things that I've gone through this year at work, I always have to remind myself, it's the world. It's the world. What do I expect? God's allowed it to happen for a reason. I need to learn this lesson. But at the end of the day, they're not my brothers and sisters necessarily in the Lord. They're my neighbor. Okay. They're my neighbor. They're who I work with, rub shoulders with. And, most people there, at work love me, we get along really well. But I've gone through a lot this year at work, and I have to constantly remind myself that, hey, it's the world. It's the world. What do I expect? What do I expect? And sometimes you get hurt by someone in the world, and it's like, well, it's the same. I see this post every now and then. Well, why do you expect any more from the world that hung your, Jesus to the cross? It's like the world hung Jesus to the cross. What else do you expect? They're not going to treat you any better. So it hurts more when you get hurt by the church, right? Because you expect more from them, right? With the world, it's expected. It's just different. It hits different, right? It's like, well, what did you expect, right? So we as Christians were held to a higher standard, and it's easier to overlook the wrong done to us by non-Christians. There's some people, a few select people at work that just for some reason don't like me, and I can honestly say they have no good reason, obviously, right? They didn't even know me, and I get switched from one department to another. They have no reason to dislike me, and yet they're out to get me like little snakes throughout the year, right? And I just have to constantly remind myself, what do I expect? What do I expect? They're the world. They're not my brother. They're not my sister in the Lord. They're just my neighbor, and the enemy's using them. They don't even realize it. I've had to constantly remind myself, and I've done a very good job of that, obviously, because I haven't lashed out and got fired, but because the old me would have, lashed out a long time ago, day one, nipped all that in the butt and said, oh no, you're not talking to me like that. You're not treating me like that. Mind your own, stay out of my way. Don't cross me. That's the old me. Now, the new me can't say all those things. Obviously, it's all still in my mind, but I'm just like having this conversation all day, like, do something, God, before I do something, rather stop me, because, it's a struggle, right? But it's like, it's the world. What do I expect? People are gonna come at me for no good reason, just because, and not come at me, but like, secretly, behind the back lies, coward things, right? So we expect that from the world. But when we're hurt by a fellow brother or hurt by a fellow sister in the Lord, that hurts more, right? Because we're held to a higher standard. So it's easier to overlook the wrong of the world sometimes, because when we look at it from that point of view, we're like, well, what else did I expect, right? But it's harder to love our brothers and sisters who are held to a higher standard. To have hate in our heart means to walk in darkness, he says here in 1 John chapter 2, verses 7 through 11. He says, to have hate in our heart means to walk in darkness. And you tell some Christians that, and they'll go, what? But it says it right there. Read it for yourself, right? To have hate in our heart means to walk in darkness. It's right there, so you can't argue with me, because John wrote it right there in 1 John. So it's like a lot of Christians will be like, no, well, it says it right there. And then they're like, well, what am I going to say to that now? We can do all these great things, like pay our tithes, right? We can pay that religiously. We can donate to the church. We can do all these things. We can be involved in every ministry. We can be that super volunteer, right? We can be that super volunteer who is all about service, right? Service, program, open, close the church, everything in between. Oh, we can do all the right things, even believe all the right things, do all these great things. Our doctrine can be spot on. It can be spot on. But if we lose love for one another, we have lost everything.